For over 40 years, she kept her sister's memory alive, a young woman whose life ended far too soon in 1982. But last week, when she opened her mailbox, there it was, a postcard in her sister's handwriting. The date on the postmark made her knees buckle, and the words written on it would haunt her forever. In the summer of 1982, Willow Creek was the kind of small American town where time seemed to slow down. The main street was lined with whitewashed storefronts and hanging flower baskets, and every evening, the air smelled faintly of cut grass and charcoal from backyard grills. For sisters Anna and Claire Whitford, that summer was supposed to be their last one together before life took them in different directions. Anna, at 22, had just finished nursing school, full of plans to move to the city. Claire, barely 19, was still in that restless stage of life, eager for adventure, but never quite ready to leave the comfort of home. They were different in almost every way. Anna was calm, careful, and soft-spoken, while Claire was impulsive, bright-eyed, and always just a little too fearless for her own good. That August, Claire had been working at the diner on Main Street, saving for a trip she talked about constantly, backpacking through Europe with friends in the fall. Every day after her shift, she'd race home, hair smelling of coffee and pancakes, and flop on Anna's bed to talk about train tickets, hostels, and the Italian coast. But on the night of August 17th, everything changed. A summer storm had rolled in earlier that day, the kind that turned the streets slick and sent the wind rattling the screen doors. The rain let up just after sunset, leaving the air heavy and damp. Claire had gone out with friends to a lakeside party, promising Anna she'd be home before midnight. She never made it back. The next morning, police found her car halfway down the embankment on Route 6, headlights still faintly glowing. The driver's door hung open. In the grass nearby, they found Claire's shoes and purse, but no sign of her. For 3 agonizing days, the search parties combed the area until they discovered her body in the shallows of the lake. The official cause of death was drowning. Anna could barely remember the funeral. She just remembered the sound of rain on the church roof, and the way her mother's hands shook as she clutched Claire's favorite scarf. For the next 42 years, Claire existed only in photographs and fading memories, her laugh a ghost that lived somewhere in the back of Anna's mind. Anna had married, raised 2 children, and buried both her parents, but there was never a day she didn't think about her little sister. And then, last Tuesday morning, Anna opened her mailbox and froze. Among the bills and grocery flyers was a single postcard, no return address, no date stamp, just a picture of a small coastal village, and handwriting she hadn't seen in 4 decades. It was Claire's. Anna sat at her kitchen table, the postcard trembling in her hands. The front showed a faded image of a seaside harbor, small fishing boats bobbing in turquoise water, stone cottages stacked on the hillside. The kind of place Claire would have loved. On the back, in looping blue ink, was a short message. Anna, I'm sorry for everything. I wish you could see the sunsets here. C. Anna traced the letter C with her finger, her chest tight. Claire had always signed her notes that way. Never Claire, never love Claire. Just that single, curling initial. It wasn't possible. Claire was gone. Anna had been there when they lowered the casket into the ground. She had watched the lake swallow her sister's name in whispers for 42 years. She flipped the postcard over again, looking for answers. No return address, no stamp. The postmark was smudged beyond recognition, just a faint circular outline and a blurred date that could have been anything. Her mind spun. Who would send this? And how would they even know the exact way Claire's handwriting slanted upward, the way she looped her L's? Anna pulled out the wooden box she kept on the top shelf of her closet. Inside were the scraps of her youth, high school photographs, ticket stubs, and a bundle of letters tied with a green ribbon. Every single one was from Claire. She compared the handwriting, letter by letter. It wasn't just similar, it was exact. That night, Anna barely slept. She kept hearing the echo of her sister's voice in her head, the way she used to say, "Annie, you worry too much," when they were kids. And she couldn't shake the image of that harbor, so vivid, so recent. By morning, she had made up her mind. She needed to know if that place was real. Anna took the postcard to the library, where she spread an atlas open on the large wooden table. Page after page of coastal maps blurred past until she found it. A near-perfect match. A fishing village on the north coast of Portugal called Nazaré. Her stomach tightened. Nazaré was famous for its massive waves, a place surfers flocked to from all over the world. But to Anna, it was just one thing. The first real lead in her sister's case since 1982. By the time she left the library, Anna wasn't sure if she was more afraid or determined. She called her son Mark, told him she'd be away for a while, and booked a one-way ticket to Portugal. What she didn't know was that someone else had been watching her since the day that postcard arrived, and they weren't going to let her reach Nazaré without a fight. The air in Lisbon was warm and heavy with the scent of salt and diesel when Anna stepped off the plane. She clutched her worn leather satchel against her side, the postcard tucked safely in the front pocket. Mark had insisted on driving her to the airport, but she hadn't told him the whole truth. She couldn't. This wasn't just about finding a place on a map. It was about facing the possibility that everything she believed about her sister's death might be wrong. From Lisbon, a 2-hour train ride carried her through rolling green hills, dotted with terracotta-roofed houses and small roadside chapels. She stared out the window, her heart pounding faster with every mile. By the time she reached Nazaré, the sun was dropping toward the horizon, staining the waves in gold. Fishing nets hung drying along the pier. Old men in wool caps sat hunched over chessboards outside a cafe. It was a postcard come to life. Anna walked along the seawall, scanning the cottages for something, anything, that felt familiar. Then she saw it. Halfway down the pier stood a white cottage with blue shutters, the paint peeling in strips. And in the upstairs window, the curtain twitched. Anna froze. The street behind her was nearly empty, except for a man leaning casually against a lamppost, smoking. He was tall, wearing a dark windbreaker and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't move when she looked at him. She turned away quickly and walked toward the cottage, her shoes clattering on the stone path. The door was locked, but a narrow alley ran alongside the building, leading to the back. She followed it and found a row of potted geraniums along the back wall, their soil freshly turned. A strange detail caught her eye. One of the pots had a slip of paper tucked into the dirt. She pulled it free, her hands trembling. On it, in the same looping handwriting as the postcard, were just 3 words: "You found me." Her breath caught, but before she could react, she heard footsteps in the alley, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Anna's grip tightened on the slip of paper. The footsteps behind her stopped. She turned. The man in the dark windbreaker stood at the mouth of the alley, blocking her exit. His face was partly hidden by the cap, but she could make out the rough line of his jaw, the shadow of stubble. He wasn't moving toward her, just standing, watching. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the distant crash of waves against the seawall. Anna's voice came out lower than she expected. "Do you know her?" The man tilted his head slightly, as though considering his answer, then stepped closer, one slow step at a time. "She told me you'd come." The words landed heavy. "Who?" Anna asked, though she already knew. He stopped just out of reach. "She's not safe here, and now, neither are you." Anna's pulse spiked. She glanced toward the pier, but when she looked back, the man was already gone, slipping into the shadows beyond the alley. Shaking, she stuffed the note into her satchel and hurried back toward the main street. She needed a room for the night, somewhere she could lock the door and think. She found a small guest house above a bakery. The owner, an elderly woman with hair the color of seashells, showed her to a corner room with a narrow bed and a single window overlooking the harbor. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the wooden floorboards below made her sit up, heart pounding. At one point, she swore she saw a figure standing at the far end of the pier, unmoving, watching the lights of the town. Just after midnight, a soft knock came at her door. She froze. The knock came again, slower this time. She reached for the chair by the window and gripped it like a weapon. Anna. Her name whispered through the door. She crossed the room, her hand shaking as she unlatched the lock. She opened the door just a crack and saw an envelope. On the floor. There was no one in the hallway. Anna shut the door, slid the bolt, and opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, its edges worn. It showed her sister, standing in front of the same cottage with blue shutters. And behind her, half hidden in the doorway, was the man from the alley. Morning broke in a wash of pale light across the harbor. Anna hadn't slept. She kept the photograph on the bed beside her all night, her eyes drifting to it again and again, as if staring hard enough might reveal something new. By dawn, she'd made a decision. She would find that cottage. Downstairs, the bakery was already open. The air smelled of coffee and warm bread, but she barely noticed. She bought a croissant, stuffed it into her bag untouched, and headed toward the narrow streets. That twisted uphill from the harbor, the photograph became her map. She traced the angle of the shutters, the slope of the roof, the way the street curved just beyond the doorway. She stopped locals as they passed, showing them the image. Most shook their heads quickly, muttered something in Portuguese, and hurried off. By midday, she had the sense that people were avoiding her. Questions on purpose. An old fisherman finally paused to study the photograph longer than the others. His eyes flicked from the picture to Anna's face. "You should not be looking for this house," he said quietly, his English thick but clear. "It brings trouble." "What kind of trouble?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a rough hand to her arm and pointed up a side street. "Last on the left," he murmured, and walked away without looking back. Anna followed the directions, the cobblestone slick from a passing drizzle. When she rounded the final bend, there it was, the same pale stucco walls, the same blue. Shutters faded by salt and sun. Her heart thudded. She approached slowly, half expecting the man from the alley to appear again. The door was ajar. She pushed it open. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying a faint scent of mildew and something metallic, like rust. The room was sparse. A wooden table, 2 chairs, and a narrow bed against the far wall. On the table sat a chipped mug and a small stack of folded papers. She reached for the top one. It was a letter written in her sister's handwriting, Anna's. Knees went weak. The letter was dated 3 weeks ago, and it began with 3 words that made her stomach twist. "I can't leave." Anna sat at the small wooden table, staring at her sister's handwriting until the words blurred. "I can't leave. They watch everything. If you found this, be careful. Don't trust the man with the green cap." Her breath came faster. Somewhere outside, a gull cried, and footsteps scraped along the cobblestones. She shoved the letter into her jacket pocket and moved toward the door, then froze. Voices. Low, male, and too close. She stepped back into the shadowed corner of the room. Heart hammering, the voices passed, fading into the drizzle, but Anna's relief was short-lived. In the silence that followed, she heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from beneath the floorboards. She crouched, pressing her ear to the cold wood. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, steady, like someone trying to send a message. "Hello," she whispered. The tapping stopped. Then, slowly, it began again. 3 short knocks, a pause, 2 long ones. Anna didn't know Morse code, but she knew desperation when she heard it. She scanned the room, spotting a loose plank near the bed. It lifted easily, revealing darkness below. A narrow crawl space stretched out onto the floor, the air inside stale and heavy. She lowered herself. In, the wood creaking under her weight. Her phone's flashlight cut a thin path through the dust dot at the far end. Two terrified eyes reflected back at her dot. It was a girl. Not her sister, but young, maybe 18, her wrists bound with coarse rope. She flinched from the light. Anna scrambled forward, fumbling with the knots. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here to help." The girl shook her head violently, her eyes darting toward the ceiling. Footsteps, heavier this time, echoed above them. The door creaked. Open. A man's voice filled the room, calm, measured, too calm. "You shouldn't have come here, Anna." Anna's blood ran cold. She recognized the voice instantly. Father Rourke, the man who had baptized her, buried her parents, and stood at the pulpit every Sunday as though his words were law. He stepped into the room slowly, his green cap pulled low, shadowing his face. In his hand, the old brass keys to the rectory glinted. "I warned Margaret once," he said softly. "She didn't listen, and now you've come." Anna tightened her grip on the young girl's arm, shielding her from view. "Where is my sister?" The priest's eyes flickered. Margaret was stubborn. She wanted the truth about the children who were sent away, but there's no undoing what's been done. Anna's chest constricted. "You killed her." He shook his head almost sadly. "No, I kept her. Where she couldn't talk, she's still here." Before he could take another step, a loud crash split the air. The back door slammed open, and two uniformed officers stormed in, weapons raised. The girl beneath the floor whimpered, and Anna pulled her up, helping her scramble out. One officer rushed her toward safety while the other wrestled Rourke too. The ground dot in the chaos. Anna's gaze locked on the narrow door at the end of the crawl space. She grabbed her flashlight and crawled toward it. The hinges groaned as she pushed it open, and there she was. Margaret, alive, but frail, sitting on a thin cot in a small stone-walled room. Her hair was gray now, her hands trembling, but when she saw Anna, her face broke into a sobbing smile. Anna fell to her knees, clutching her sister, feeling the years collapse between them. Later, the officers would tell her that Father Rourke had been hiding victims for decades, runaways, girls who had shamed their families, anyone he deemed in need of saving from the outside world. Many had never been found. Margaret's only words as they led her into the sunlight were whispered into Anna's ear. "I knew you'd come." For the first time in 49 years, the church bell rang not for Mass, but for freedom.